You're listening to Murder Not Murdering with Erin,
And Autumn,
a true crime podcast about murder and murdering.
but we are not murderers.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Murder Not Murdering with Erin all by myself. Unfortunately, Autumn and Dustin recently had a loss of a family member, so my heart goes out to them, and I completely understand that Autumn was not able to record with me this week. It was a lot of fun having Tim on the podcast last week. Very appreciative of him for coming on. And we love getting the feedback from you guys that you enjoyed it. Thanks again, Tim, for coming on to the podcast. And for tonight, I thought I would break from my regular scheduled murders. So, as many of you know, a lot of times when I do my cases, they're based on something that took place between the range of 1850 to 1970. I very rarely do any cases that are more modern, partly because that's how we do our podcast. Autumn will do cases that are specifically more for the later time period so that we don't overlap. We don't have the same cases. We never want to do that. But because Autumn's not here, I thought I would jump into her territory a little and do a modern case that literally went to trial July 2025. So it's a pretty good, uh, exciting ish case. And I know this is one that Autumn will be interested in. So I thought I would do one for her. So this is for Autumn. I'm sorry your heart is hurting, friend, and I'm sending you all the love in the world. And this case is going to be an interesting one. So let's jump right into it. I don't have a title for this one, but bear with me. Here we go. Poison is patient. It doesn't scream. It doesn't stab. It doesn't shoot. It waits. It whispers. It hides in the sweet taste of trust. In March of 2023, in Aurora, Colorado, a wife of 23 years, Angela Craig, starts to feel weak, dizzy, sick to her stomach, a strange pain gnawing from the inside out. Her husband, James Craig, was a dentist, a man who smiled for a living, a man who knew chemistry, who knew anatomy, who knew how to measure out the smallest doses. Every day she drank protein shakes that he blended for her after they worked out together. They were supposed to make her strong. Instead, they made her weak. What she didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that those shakes were being laced with poison. And behind every glass of froth and fruit, James Craig was hiding a secret. This is not just the story of one woman's death. It's the story of betrayal, of digital footprint and chemical trails, of a family torn apart by a husband who thought he could get away with the perfect murder. Angela and James Craig looked like they have built the perfect life. Married for more than 2 decades, 6 children, a busy home in the suburbs of Aurora, not far from the shadow of the Rocky Mountains. She was devoted, friends said, a woman whose world revolved around her kids, her church, her family. He was the provider, the practicing dentist with his own office, Summerbrook Dental Group. By appearances, the Craigs were living the American dream. But appearances are slippery things. Behind closed doors, prosecutors would later tell a different story. James Craig was drowning in money problems, in failed business decisions, in debt that stacked like bricks on his back. While Angela was pouring her life into the children, James was chasing something else entirely. Affairs, multiple ones, online relationships, women in other states, secrets that Angela either didn't see or chose not to. The summer of 2020 had hit his practice hard. Summerbrook Dental filed for bankruptcy. Patients slowed, bills didn't. For a man who made his living on the trust of his community, the cracks were already showing. But still, to the outside world, James Craig was a husband, a father, a dentist, smiling, shaking hands, blending protein shakes in the kitchen for his wife. And then came March of 2023. It started small, headaches, a little dizziness, a fainting spell here and there. Angela told James she didn't feel right. Something was wrong. On March 6th, she was admitted to the hospital for the first time. Doctors ran tests. Nothing obvious. Maybe dehydration, maybe infection. And when they didn't get answers, they sent her home. She drank another shake, and she collapsed again. Back to the hospital. Her symptoms grew worse: vomiting, severe dizziness, confusion, a sense that her body was betraying her. And yet, every time she went in, doctors struggled to find answers. Test after test came up empty. It looked like a puzzle without a solution. But poison doesn't leave its fingerprints right away. Sometimes it only leaves symptoms, and James Craig was counting on that. In the hospital, James appeared every bit the concerned husband. He texted family members. He told friends she was unwell. He stayed by her bedside. He wrote her text messages, concerned, missing their cuddles. And then, for her health, he blended her shakes and brought them in and urged her to drink when she wasn't hungry. To the outside world, he was the picture of devotion. But prosecutors later revealed the picture was painted with deceit. While Angela was fighting for her life, James was on his laptop, searching for things no loving husband should ever type. How many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human? Is arsenic detectable in an autopsy? How to make a murder look like a heart attack? He wasn't Googling ways to save his wife's life. He was researching ways to finish her. At his dental office, packages were arriving, bottles marked with names that meant nothing to his staff: potassium cyanide, arsenic trioxide, toxic compounds delivered through mail. It wasn't malpractice. It wasn't a mistake. It was planning. Angela's friends noticed that she seemed thinner, weaker, different. Her sister later told investigators Angela wondered if maybe it was the shakes. She thought the taste was off. But who would suspect it was their husband of 23 years? The father of her children, the man who sat beside her in her hospital bed. The bond of marriage is supposed to be unshakable. Pun intended. I hope you all saw what I did there. I don't have anybody to laugh at my jokes. Anyway, and James Craig was counting on that bond to cover his tracks. But poison has a way of whispering the truth. The symptoms built a timeline. The purchases built a paper trail. And the internet searches drew a map. And soon investigators would follow that map right to James Craig. Poison is a coward's weapon. It doesn't demand confrontation. It doesn't risk the noise of a gunshot or the blood of a knife. It slides in quietly, measured in milligrams, hidden in sugar, and it waits for the heart to slow. Angela Craig trusted her husband, and when he blended a shake, she drank it. When he smiled, she believed him. But those shakes weren't fuel, they were a weapon. So to recap, March 6th, Angela was in the hospital, dizzy, vomiting, weak, her condition baffling. She was discharged 2 days later, she returns, worse. Her sister says that the shakes that James keeps making her tastes strange to her. She wondered if he was using maybe a new supplement, something he hadn't told her about. But James brushed it off, told her it was stress, dehydration, and then when no one is watching, he's pulling out his phone. He looked up the top 5 undetectable poisons that show no signs in an autopsy. How to order potassium cyanide. And while Angela laid in her hospital bed, struggling to keep food down, James Craig was texting another woman, a mistress, a woman he had been seeing online. Her name was never supposed to come out, but court filings later revealed it. A Texas orthodontist, someone James Craig had met at a dental conference in Las Vegas. He told her he was trapped in a loveless marriage, that his wife was dying and that soon he'd be free, that he was divorcing and currently living in a separate apartment. He bought plane tickets to fly her in. He told her he was ready to start a new life. It wasn't divorce that he was planning, it was murder. And Angela Craig, fighting for her life in her hospital bed, has no idea that while her organs failed, her husband was planning to escape to another woman's arms. On March 15th, Angela was admitted to the hospital for the last time. Her condition deteriorated rapidly. The doctors noticed an unusual pattern: extreme acidosis, organ failure, and neurological decline. Something was poisoning her, but the tests weren't giving any answers, and they weren't doing it fast enough. Meanwhile, James kept arriving at the hospital with shakes. He blended them at home. He told nurses it was to help her recover. He fed them to her while monitors beeped in the background. Each sip carried her closer to the edge. On March 18th, 2023, after a visit with food from James, Angela Craig slipped into a coma. She never woke up. She was placed on life support, but sadly, she was declared brain dead and the machines quieted as she passed away. She was 43 years old, a wife, a mother of 6, and now a victim of poison. And the case might have ended there. A tragic, mysterious death with no answers. But James Craig wasn't as clever as he thought. While Angela was still alive, an employee at his dental office had intercepted a strange package. It was addressed to the practice with his name on it. Inside, a vial labeled potassium cyanide. The employee didn't know what to do. They brought it up to his business partner, another dentist, and then they asked James about it. He brushed it off. But when Angela's condition collapsed the very same week, the coincidence was too sharp to ignore. James's business partner noted that this was not a substance needed or used in dental practice, and he suspected that James, his friend and business partner, was poisoning his wife, as there was no reason for him to need that substance. So he told the nurses at the hospital, and that's when the hospital called the police. Detectives in Aurora started digging. They pulled search history for James Craig's Google accounts. They found that he had started a new email address called Jim and Waffles, in which he emailed his mistress, searched for poisons, and ordered them. They subpoenaed his purchases. They spoke to staff at the dental office. What they found was a breadcrumb trail of intent. January 2023, Google searches. How many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human? February 2023, orders for arsenic trioxide and potassium cyanide shipped to his dental office. Early March, searches for top 5 undetectable poisons. He had practically written his own confession in keystrokes. And the protein shakes, they were his delivery system, his sweet disguise. Investigators knew right away Angela Craig had not died by chance. She had been murdered one sip at a time. On March 19th, 2023, just hours after Angela was declared brain dead, detectives made their move. They arrested James Craig at the hospital, the very place he had played the part of grieving husband. The mask of the caring dentist slipped. Behind it was a man who thought he was smarter than science, smarter than law. But poison doesn't just kill, it leaves a trail. And the police picked up those breadcrumbs. His arrest warrant was 52 pages long, detailing his recent movements and history. Angela Craig's autopsy confirmed what investigators had suspected: lethal amounts of cyanide in her system, in her blood. Enough to stop her heart, enough to silence her forever. But cyanide isn't subtle. It burns a bright light in toxicology. They could even see that she had gotten more cyanide the very day that she died, the day that James brought her some food right before she crashed. James Craig hadn't chosen the perfect poison. He had chosen one that screams its presence once investigators knew where to look. And in court, that forensic evidence combined with his digital footprint, his purchases, his affair, would be the noose around his neck. Murderers like James Craig always believe two things: they're smarter than everyone else, and that no one is watching. But in the 21st century, someone's always watching. And if they aren't, the data is. Police seized James Craig's laptop and phone. What they found was a roadmap to murder. He hadn't stopped there. He'd researched poisoning symptoms, case studies of other killers, and even asked his search bar if anyone could survive cyanide poisoning with small doses. Every click, another nail in the coffin. Forensic toxicologists confirmed cyanide in Angela's blood. They found traces in the protein powder container, in residue from the shakes he had blended. This wasn't a mystery sickness, it was deliberate, methodical. And the digital trail was as damning as the autopsy. Prosecutors always need three things: means, motive, and opportunity. Means, the poison; opportunity, the shakes. But the motive, that's what transforms suspicion into certainty. And James Craig's motive was dripping with cliche. The mistress, the dream of a new life, the promise that he would finally be free. While Angela lied dying, he texted another woman. He told her his wife wasn't going to make it and that soon he'd be a widower and they could finally be together. It was as if he was rehearsing his own alibi in real time. But to the jury, it painted him as heartless. Not just a killer, but a man eager to step over his wife's body and into another woman's arms. The mistress was Karen Kane, that orthodontist. She said that they had an intimate relationship, but it was never sexual. She told him in emails she was praying that his days got better and prayed that his family would get through watching his wife be so sick. She was cooperative with the police and stunned to find out the truth. By July 2025, just 2 months ago from this podcast recording, the trial was underway. James Craig, once the respected dentist of Aurora, now sat at the defense table in a suit that couldn't hide the weight of his crimes. Prosecutors laid out their case with precision. They showed Google searches. They showed Amazon and other chemical supply orders. They played text messages between Craig and his mistress, full of anticipation for Angela's death. The defense tried to argue that Angela had died from natural causes. They suggested that maybe she had poisoned herself. Maybe she'd taken something accidentally. James even suggested that she was possibly suicidal and that she had asked him to order the poison as a sick game of chicken, whether she would do it or not. But no one corroborated this. No one thought she was suicidal. And the evidence was loud. The jury saw a man who researched poisons, ordered them, concealed them in shakes, watched his wife suffer while flirting with another woman. In noir, you'd call it overkill. In court, they call it proof. Angela's sister testified. She told the jury that Angela had confided her fears, that something about the shakes didn't taste right. Colleagues from the dental office described the packages of poison arriving at work. They remember how James Craig seemed oddly calm while Angela's condition collapsed. Even the mistress took the stand, admitting the conversations they'd had and the promises he'd made. Each voice chipped away at the facade that James Craig had built. Each word tightened the net around him. Then came the science. Toxicologists explained cyanide's effect on the body, how it binds to hemoglobin, how it halts cellular respiration, how it starves the body of oxygen from the inside out. Angela's cells suffocated while her lungs kept breathing. Her heart had been beating while her organs drowned in poison. The forensic team told the jury, there is no doubt she died from cyanide poisoning. And the source of that cyanide, the very same batch that Craig had ordered. It was clinical, it was precise, and it was damning. The defense tried to paint Craig as desperate, not murderous. They argued that he was a broken man, a failed dentist under stress. But stress doesn't order cyanide. Desperation doesn't Google undetectable poisons. And no accident hides in a protein shake mixed in the kitchen. The jury deliberated less than a day. Guilty. First-degree murder, tampering with the human body, attempting to poison through deceit. Angela's death was no longer a medical mystery. It was murder, cold, calculated, poison poured by the man she trusted most. And James Craig, the smiling dentist, the father of 6, was unmasked for what he truly was, a coward with a blender, a murderer hiding. Trials end, but the damage doesn't. When James Craig was sentenced, the courtroom was filled with silence. The kind of silence that comes from 6 children realizing that their father murdered their mother, and they are now orphans. The judge's voice was clear. Life in prison, no parole. Angela Craig's sister read a statement. You took from her everything she was. A mother, a sister, a friend. You thought you were clever. You thought you could have it all. But you have nothing now. James Craig sat emotionless. The smile that once charmed patients, that once fooled his wife, was gone. 6 children left without a mother, left with a father condemned as a killer. They will grow up with questions no child should ever carry. Why? How could he? Was our family ever real? For them, this case is not just evidence in verdicts. It's a loss carved into every day of their lives. Poison is a cruel weapon. It doesn't just kill the body, it erodes trust. It rewrites love into betrayal. Angela Craig believed she was safe in her own home. She believed her husband was on her side, that he was helping to heal her. She believed that marriage was a promise. But James Craig turned that promise into a lie. He poured betrayal into every glass. And for what? An affair, a fantasy, a coward's dream of freedom? There were suggestions that maybe he did it because he stood to get $3.4 million in insurance money if Angela died. According to his bankruptcy reports, it appeared that he was $2.2 million in the hole. But do we know that that's the reason? We don't. And James Craig thought he was so clever. But the truth rose. It rose from a blender, from a browser history, from a vial of cyanide. Angela Craig's voice was silenced, but the evidence spoke for her, louder than James Craig ever imagined. James Craig will spend the rest of his life in prison. Angela's memory lives on through her children, her family, and the friends who still speak her name. The perfect murder doesn't exist. And sometimes the darkest secrets are hiding in plain sight, in the kitchen, in a smile, in a husband who couldn't keep his lies buried. My sources were NPR, The James Craig Trial. CBS News, July 30th, 2025. The CBS News episode of 48 Hours. Colorado Public Radio, The Guardian, ABC News, The Colorado Sun, People Magazine, and The Daily Beast. Well, that was a wild case. I rarely get the sources to find all of the information. So it was kind of a more interesting way to do research and definitely a very different way to research. I was watching episodes and listening to podcasts and so many articles. If you do want to learn more about this case, I would recommend checking out our Instagram page at Murder Not Murdering, where we will post pictures of all the people involved. And check out our TikTok, MNM.pod. And we will post videos on there also detailing these things. Thank you so much for listening to me. And Autumn will be back with me next week. New episodes are usually out on Mondays, sometimes Tuesdays, depending on my editing schedule. And again, we so appreciate you listening to us. And please share with your friends. It would be really awesome to have more listeners and to share these stories so that we never forget the victims, their names, and hopefully stop people from doing this in the future. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back again next week. Bye.